What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode here of Crush Live Call-ins. I'm Bart Hansen. It is December 2nd, and we are actually going to put the live stream up full and unedited for everyone to watch. We do this once a year, right around the time of right after Thanksgiving for the Cyber Monday deal. So normally, if you're watching this whole thing and you're not a subscriber, what we do is anybody can watch this live stream entirely live when it goes on Mondays at 3 p.m., but then it goes unlisted. And if you're a CLP website subscriber, you can always watch the unlisted link. We deliver the unlisted link, and we actually put this show up as a podcast as well for subscribers. And then we take the best hands and then we make videos out of them, with graphics and things like that for the YouTube. So what you'll see here is our live stream, which is me basically typing out the hands as they go. And then we'll actually take the best hands and then make videos. So if you're watching this live stream, you'll probably see some of these hands graphically displayed later on. People will be like, repeat. And it's like, guys, we take the hands from the live stream and make them into videos. But we've got 5 callers here today. And the other thing, too, is we are doing Cyber Monday sale. So if you're not a CLP website subscriber, for today only, you can actually subscribe to any plan level. Cyber Monday, 30% off. And we never used to do that for our yearly subscription. That's a great deal. You can actually apply that for the yearly subscription because the yearly subscription is already discounted by a bunch anyways. So if you actually take us up on the 30%, I think it's like $350 for the year. It's something like less than $30 a month, where normally the price is $50 a month. So, I mean, you're looking at a huge discount. So check it out for today. Only Cyber Monday, or it started on Black Friday to Cyber Monday. Want to give a shout out to everybody here in the live chat, keeping it real as always. And Michael G, moderator extraordinaire, big thanks to him. I mean, he's just been awesome. He's our support manager, and he has been just holding down the fort because this is like the time, these 3 or 4 days where we get the most support inquiries, and he's just been great. Along with my promotions manager, Ryan Nash. Can't say enough about those 2 guys. But we've got 5 calls here today. If you're interested in calling in the show, we're always looking for new callers. You can click on the link in the description, by the way, too. The Cyber Monday sale, you can click on the link in the description for that as well. It's in the link right now here in the call-ins link. You can take a look at that. But I like to keep the show as interactive as possible with people in the live chat. So let's get into it here on December 2nd. 2024, and we're going to go here to the first caller, who is going to be John. Hello, John. You're up first.
Hey, Bart. How are you?
How is it going, John? John, where are you playing out of?
Graton Casino in Santa Rosa area.
Oh, that's right. Great. And John has called into the show before. I think we do have actually 2 or 3 people that actually are first-time callers, but John always sends in good hands. So he's on the show quite a bit. I've played at Graton many times, and I've talked to many new people that have come onto the site today from the Bay Area. It's a nice place. When I went up there, Sonoma County. And this is 2.5, is that right?
3.5, actually.
3.5, 1K cap, is that right?
1,500 cap.
Oh, nice. Has it always been 1,500?
It's moved around a little bit, but for at least a year now, I think it's been 1,500, maybe longer than that.
Okay, cool. By the way, too, I will say, if you're hearing these pings and stuff on the live stream in the background, I think with this group, we're actually going to probably not that much background noise, but one of the things that we do is we edit out and we try to make the best audio for the YouTube stuff. So, you might hear background noise on the live stream. You might hear those Google Meet dings, which we cannot get rid of. There's no way to block them unless somebody knows. Somebody actually did help me with Google Meet actually controlling my microphone. But all that stuff goes away when we do the YouTube stuff. All right, so how deep are you for this hand?
So I'm the effective stack at 1,100.
All right, so 1,100 effective, 3.5, Graton, which is in, like I said, just north of San Francisco. Okay.
And so I'm in the cutoff with Jack of Diamonds, 10 of Diamonds.
Hero in the cutoff, Jack of Diamonds, 10 of Diamonds. Okay.
And I think we were 9-handed here. The nine-handed's full.
Okay.
And so it folds around to me in the cutoff, and I open to 20.
So it folds to the hero in the cutoff, and hero opens to 20. Okay.
And the button calls, the small blind calls, and the big blind calls.
Small blind, button, or button, small blind, and big blind call against a weight position open, right? I mean, this is what a typical live poker, right? Because it's two blinds, so you're not that incentivized to always drive everybody out. But I mean, how often are you really flatting button versus cutoff? I suppose it's okay sometimes within a two blind format, but then, if you're in the small blind, now you're even more incentivized to squeeze. This is just typical live poker. I don't know when this setup would ever really be proper in theory. Cutoff, open, button call. Especially at these stacked ups. But anyways, 20, 40, 60, 80, right? Something like that. Yeah. Okay.
Minus the drop, so
yeah,
more like
maybe 75. So Jack 10 of diamonds from the cutoff, 3 people call. Okay.
Flop is 9 of hearts, 8 of diamonds, deuce of diamonds.
Wow. 9 of hearts, 8 of diamonds, deuce of diamonds. So you flop the world here, right?
Yeah.
So you got the flush draw, open-ended straight draw, 15 out draw, top pair dynamic board, like I like to call that, where, if somebody hasn't flopped a set here, there's obviously there's 1-2 pair that could be viable in the form of 9-8. But if someone hasn't flopped a set here and they were going to 3-bet off 10s plus, the best of their hand they're going to have is a 9. And it's hard for a 9 to call down a lot of times inherently as overcards come out. So this is a pretty good spot for you, to the point where I usually don't c-bet. I don't even know if you would call this a c-bet bluff. I was going to say I don't normally c-bet bluff into 3 people. This is almost more of like it's a bluff, but it's almost like value. You're getting like multiple things accomplished here if you bet. And that's actually one of the minor small stakes exploits. I was looking through the whole list the other day. One of the small stakes exploits is actually betting, I think, a higher concentration of draws on the flop, no matter what the sort of texture is. You got good things going on here anyways. So I would be doing a lot of betting if it does get checked to you.
Yep. So it does get checked to me, and I bet 50.
All right, so the blinds check. And hero bets 50. By the way, just something that just popped out at me here, John, too. In a different configuration, meaning like if there were more people behind you, as opposed to, because remember, the blinds have just checked you, right? So you only got one guy behind you. If you were in a situation where maybe you had opened early and then 3 people in the field had called, you actually might check raise this hand for max fold equity. We've talked about sometimes check raising as the pre-flop raiser. I wouldn't do that here because I just think the button's going to check through so much. You get 2 guys naturally checking to the, sort of undefined hands out of the blind. So if you don't get a bet in now, I think you might lose a little bit of credibility later on.
Yeah, totally agree.
So you bet 50, okay. Mm-hmm.
I bet 50, the button folds, the small blind calls.
Okay.
And then the big blind raises to 150.
That's interesting. That's a really small raise, huh?
Yep.
That is a really, really small raise. So you go 50, the button folds, small blind calls, and the big blind raises to 150. This is kind of one of these ones where I'm a little troubled here, meaning like I feel like if he had a draw and he was doing this, it would be larger. And the board is draw heavy. It kind of seems like it's a lot of thick value, like almost like a set. That's a pretty, it's kind of even rare to have a guy like do this with just 9-8. They would almost want to do this, to protect more. And it would be a much easier situation here for you, John, if you were just heads up, because if you bet 50, let's say the small blind folded out 2, and then this guy check raised to 150. I think you would just have an easy call. Now people might reflex, be like, oh, 3-bet. The problem with 3-betting, I'm talking about if you were heads up, is if the guy's range of check raising is a set, it's just a spew to 3-bet. That would be a lot easier because you wouldn't have to worry about possibly some of your draws, which are not the nut draws besides the straight draw, being good. And I wonder here, because if the small blind's in there, does that possibly make you think about trying to drive the small blind out of the hand. The only problem though, John, is and I'm not saying that you're going to do that. I'm just saying, kind of talking through it. If you do that and the big blind is like really strong here, he's just going to jam it in your face. And okay. Yeah. I mean, hey, against the set, you're 60-40. So if you want to make the case that the value here or the best play is to get the small blind out, and then maybe the big blind only like 3-bet jams on you like only 70% of the time. And then when he does, like you're 60-40, I guess somebody could make that argument, but it's a little bit tricky with the small blind in there.
Yeah, I all the things that you said are exactly what I was thinking as well. This villain, the big blind, I do consider to be a very solid player. I don't think he's making some bizarre move with that small raise size. I thought it was entirely thick value. I thought he was 8-9 minimum and more likely a set. So I was very concerned, and did think that if I raised, he would just shove over the top of me and really put me in an unhappy position. Although, as you said, I do have equity, but a lot of equity. So
I'll read one of these comments here. Glitch47 says Bart gives players way too much credit to be able to think through their sizings. His size doesn't matter much here. The fact that he raised mattered. He can probably just have 9x LOL. Yeah, I don't buy that, Glitch47. Like it went back call. Like some guy with like Jack 9 is not just 3xing here, like in a single raise pot. Now, could a guy have like 9x of diamonds here? Like ace 9 of diamonds, king 9 of diamonds, maybe something like that, I suppose. Of course, he's behind to that anyways. But were you concerned about the small blind being in there though, John?
I was. Yeah. I was. For exactly the reasons that you said, that I was, worried that if I just call, it encourages him to come in and he might, have some of my outs. So,
yeah.
But nevertheless,
sounds to me like you called, right?
I did call.
All right. So what did the small blind do?
Unfortunately, he called also.
Yeah, I mean, and the reason why that's troubling even more so is because when you take a look at like what the small blind calls your bet with, like say you're small, before we get to the check raise, before the fact the big blind check raises, you bet and the small blind called. What's that range? Well, I mean, the small blind could have a 9. Small blind might even have an 8, right? Small blind could also have draws. The troubling part of this is that once he calls and then the guy to his left check raises and then you call, a lot of that 9x and 8x just fold out now, right? Unless the guy's a huge drooler. And now it leans him towards some of those draws. And then you wonder now, like if a diamond comes, are you good?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But I mean, what are you going to do though? You can't fold. And it's like, you don't want to 3-bet. So it's kind of like, well, you call and then you hope the small blind folds out. Now that he doesn't, you might just use that information, playing the hand onward. I mean, you guys put in 450 here on the flop. So now it's 525 and you guys have like maybe 900 to 950, something like that, moving the turn.
Right.
Okay. All right. What's the turn here?
The turn is the Jack of clubs.
Okay. So now you turn top pair. It doesn't really do anything in terms of, the only thing that this does is it will give you more equity against 9-8, which I doubt that this guy has. But then it actually puts you ahead of the higher draws that are not paired. Like if somebody had king, queen of diamonds, you were behind to that, right? Now you're ahead of that. But again, you're against 2 people though. So that's an interesting turn card.
Yeah. So the small blind checks and the big blind bets 400.
So the big blind bets 400. Again, wow, this is really interesting. So you start this street with 900 to 950. The big blind bets 400. So the pot's 925 and it's 400 for you to call. Again, I go back to like, if the small blind was not in the hand, then this would just be a call all day long, 100% call, right? There would be absolutely no reason to ever raise. It would be a pure spew, especially when your equity actually goes down against a set here on the turn. In the sense that your equity goes down, like you take away one of his like board pairing outs because you have a jack, but it doesn't do anything for your hand, right? Jack 10 on a jack turn against like a set of 8s or a set of deuces. The problem, though, is that if you are up against a better made hand and then someone has you dominated on the draw side, you have very little equity here.
Yep. Yep.
I remember that's one of the first tweets I put out. Like, if you're in a three-way pot and somebody has a better made hand than you and your draw is dominated, it's a recipe for 0% equity. Now, you probably don't have 0% because of your straight draw, but oh man, I mean, it's one of these things where, God, you're so handcuffed here. You're really handcuffed here because if you call, the pot's going to be 13.25. So if the guy has a higher diamond draw than you, then you just, he's always going to overcall. But at the same time, I don't think possibly raising to drive the small blind out is that good of a play, because now that you've burned a card, you are only probably like 25% now against a set. When you have a 15 out draw, it goes from like 60-40 on the flop to a brick on the turn. You're like 25%. You might be a little bit more than that, like I said, because of the jack, because he's got less outs to pair the jack. And I wonder if you could call here, and then if the small blind calls behind, I'm thinking through this. Like, I don't think that raising can be correct, though, when you're just behind by like 27% against this guy's range. I mean, maybe I am like giving that guy too much credit, always having a set or something like that. But if you call and then the small blind overcalls, you can still make a straight. And then if the small blind overcalls, you'll have like 500 left. If you call, the pot will be 17.25, and you only have 500 left. Because I was wondering if the river was a diamond and the small blind like jammed the river, could you fold? But God, you only have 500 left.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because it's like, yeah, you're only 27, 28% against a set. So you don't want to put the extra 500 in, but at the same time, you might only have like 5 to 10% equity or 10 to 15% equity if the other guy stays in. So if you drive the other guy out, your equity goes up for the entire pot. So it's very, very tricky and very, very bizarre. I still kind of think I might want to call. I mean, I would almost have to I don't know if I've ever thought about a hand in this way actually before, because there's already 900 in the pot. So he bets 4 into 525. So there's already 900. If you put in 900 to basically, like, I guess you could say 900 to win the 900, but then it drives your equity up. It's not really 900 to win 900 because you're going to get money from the other guy, but it's an extra 500 on the side. It's basically like you're getting 2.5 to 1 on 400, and then you're giving yourself 1 to 1 on 500. This is why it's so complex. But the problem is that you're always going to be behind, right, to the guy who's leading this action, but then you can increase your equity if you drive the other guy out. Wow, it's a really weird spot. What did you do, by the way?
I mean, you were going through exactly the thoughts that I was having, and I was very, very, that was, I hated the idea of calling, letting in the other guy drawing, and especially if he had a bigger diamond. But even that with the jack now, a random 10, like if he had, I don't know, 10-8 of hearts or something like that, now I'm chopping with him, so I have less equity even if I hit my hand.
You mean you're talking about that from the small blind, you mean?
From the small blind.
Yeah,
right?
But is he ever overcalling a check raise with 10-8 of hearts, though?
So he was relatively loose. I don't know if he was that loose, but yeah, either way, I hated the idea of actually making my hand and losing to him. So I decided to jam to effectively just get him out of the hand, knowing that I was behind the main villain, the big blind.
I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. Like I said, like I've been doing this show for 7 years. I don't know what the answer to this from a mathematical perspective. Like, I would actually have to think about this one, because again, it's a situation where you could do it out mathematically, right? Let's just do it. I mean, maybe I'll slot something in. Like, if you slot in a set for the big blind, and then you slot in, like, say, king, queen of diamonds, or the nut flush draw for the small blind, how is this hand played? What is the most profitable way to play this hand? Assuming that if you call, the small blind will call behind you. But if you jam, the small blind will fold behind you. What is the most profitable way to play this hand? I still don't think it could be full, because your equity goes up. But remember, you're only putting in the 500 to get the other guy out. I don't know what the answer is. I as a gut reaction, I still don't think that jamming would be correct though. But anyways, okay, you jam. Does that get the small blind out?
It did. It did.
All right.
And yeah, the big blind calls. He has a set of 9s.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I think that's so small blind folds and big blind calls. And again, that's really what we thought. Set of 9s, so you're like 26, 27%, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then do you hit?
Unfortunately, I bricked.
And then a brick at the end.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it turns out it was so I think for what you described, it probably was a bad shove regardless. But it turns out it was even worse because the small blind said he had a smaller flush draw.
He had a smaller flush draw.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of washed over the fact. I mean, it seems insane to me. I kind of washed over the fact that, is this just a fold on the turn, which just seems absolutely insane.
Yeah.
It's just one of these spots where, again, like, even if let's just say what the players had, because I still don't know the answer. Like, if you say what the players had in the sense of, okay, the big blind has 9-9. The other guy's got like ace-3 of diamonds. How do we play this spot? If jamming, we'll fold out ace-3 of diamonds, but calling will bring in ace-3 of diamonds. Is it a fold? Is it a jam? Because you still have 27% equity, but the thing is that you're only getting 2.5 to 1 before you jam. So that's the problem, right? So maybe you have like the correct equity, right? Because you're getting 2.5 to 1 before you jam, like if you were to just call the 400. But the problem is that extra 500, you're not getting 2.5 to 1 on, you're getting 1 to 1 on. So if your equity even heads up is 27%, maybe it is a fold. It's a really, really crazy spot, but thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks.
That is, yeah, I don't get many hands where I'm like, wow, from a math perspective, I'm not 100% sure what to do. Let's go to our next caller here. It's Eric. Hello, Eric. You're up next.
Hey, Bart. How you doing?
How's it going? Eric, you are a first-time caller, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Right, because I think you just joined the site. Is that right?
Yeah.
All right, so where are you playing out of?
Yeah, I'm playing out of the South Bend Four Winds Casino.
Oh, that's right. South Bend.
For a little context, I'm pretty new to poker in general. I've played primarily 1-2, 1-3. I've been doing pretty well, admittedly playing kind of nitty, but I've played like just under 200 hours, and I've done pretty well. But I know you talk a lot about, getting out of the low stakes. It's kind of a rake trap, and so
Definitely.
I actually played a 5 session.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, right? Like, it's a rake trap in a lot of markets. Like, it's a rake trap in any flat drop market, like in Southern California, like I talk about. If you're in a special market where, like a Texas, where it's, it's a time game and the caps are really large, not all things apply. But for example, from the previous caller who's in Graton, where there's a drop, for the most part, I would say maybe 80 or 90% of markets, yeah, you want to move up to the $5 blind level. By the way, you're the dude on Discord that I was talking. We were texting back and forth. Everybody who joins the site, you have to contact me personally to get permission. So I talk to everybody that comes on. You're the guy where I was talking about. I was watching the Colts Patriots game, right? Yesterday?
Yeah, that's right.
So
yeah.
I didn't follow the any of the pundits, but an insane thing happened in that game yesterday where the Colts scored a touchdown at the end, and then they went for 2, and they went ahead with 20 seconds left. And then somehow the Patriots were able to attempt a 69-yard field goal, and the guy almost made it. It would have been the most unbelievable field. He was a few yards short. But a few plays before that, it was really obvious that the Colts had an incomplete pass with a minute left, and it would have made it 4th and 10. And Gerard Mayo didn't challenge the pass. It was literally one of the worst decisions I've ever seen a coach make. I wonder if he's going to get fired over that at the end of the season. I don't know if they've been talking about that or not. But anyways, I digress. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did see that.
Yeah.
I also thought, I know it's he goes close, but I still think you throw a Hail Mary there. Like that's 68 yards,
Yeah,
right?
but
Like,
the
I
guy
mean,
almost made it though. I mean, he's already had a 63 yarder though too,
yeah,
earlier in
it
the
was
season.
very
So
close,
they
but
usually know his distance. All right. So what's the size of this game here?
yeah, so this is a 2-5 match to stack. I think it's like 75% match.
Okay.
And it is the biggest game in the area,
Okay.
as
Okay.
far
So
as
there you
I
go.
know.
Yeah.
And actually, something interesting about it was there's like the main table here, and then there's a feeder table. So I had just, and I had never done this before. I didn't know it was a thing, but I sat down at the feeder table. I played for a bit. I actually just played a hand where I almost got stacked, which kind of like plays into it. I had pocket kings, and the guy flopped a set, and I actually sucked down to rivered it. And I don't know. I kind of like. I feel like I saw ghosts after that, so that kind of plays into how I played this hand. But then, basically right after that hand, I got moved to the main table.
But you won the hand though.
I did win the hand, but I was like, man, I
Oh.
should have gotten stacked because
So now all of a sudden you're like, and then this is the first time you sort of moved up. So you're like, what am I doing in this game? Was that kind of the feeling you were getting? Okay.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So you
It's
get
again biggest game I've really played in
all right.
short stack.
So the biggest game ever. So you get moved to the main game. How deep are you?
I'm 800 effective. I started short stack.
Okay.
400.
Which is, by the way, this one is things that I recommend. I always say to people, like, especially these guys in LA, because I'm so familiar. They're playing 1-3 or 2-3 or whatever the structure is, and I know the max buy-in in that game is like 300, and I'm like, guys, just go buy in for 300 at like 5-5 at Commerce or Hollywood Park. You're gonna see that the players aren't that much better. I mean, it's gonna be boring. You're gonna play tight, but the rake and the drop isn't gonna eat you so much alive. All right, so 800 effective in the main game, 2-5. Okay.
Yep. And so I'm under the gun
Mm-hmm.
with ace of spades, queen of diamonds.
Okay.
I open to 20, and I get 4 callers. +1, low jack, hijack, and button. I'll call on the blinds full down.
+1 hijack, low jack, and the button call.
Yeah.
So 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's $80. By the way, I got to tell you that when I first made the move up to 1020 brown chip at the bike, first of all, it took me and David Tuckman, it took us like almost like a year to start playing 510. Like we were limit props in 2005 at the bike, back in 2005, but we had been commentating live at the bike for a year. And I played some 5-5, but we never like moved up to 510. And then finally he did one day, and then I sort of joined him at the beginning of 2006, and we were instantly some of the best players in the room from just watching so much stuff. But I remember when I first started playing 1020, or really the very first time I played 1020, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it kind of reminds me, like I had a hand where like I raised with like pocket queens. I mean, you have ace queen here, right? And I got 4 or 5 callers, and they were like all in position. I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to play it? Now I had like 3,000 in front of me, which was a lot for me at the time. But you're probably going into this like, oh, if I hit, am I going to check? If I make it, am I going to check? Put it this way. If you're nervous in this spot playing the biggest game that you ever did, I've been there. It was quite a long time ago, but I've been there. So we're at $80 to the flop. Okay.
Yeah. I appreciate the sympathy. I have +1 low jack, hijack, button. So that's 5 players.
Oh, 5 players. +1 yes. Hijack, low jack, and button. So it's 5 players. So it's 100. There you go. Even worse.
Yes, it's 100.
Okay.
No worries.
Yeah.
Up comes queen of spades, 6 of hearts, 7 of hearts.
Queen of spades, 7 of hearts, 6 of hearts. Okay, so here we go, right? You flop top, but it's certainly a draw heavy board, right? It's certainly a draw heavy board, and you might be like, I don't necessarily know what to do. And my advice to you, I actually don't remember exactly, because I remember you sent me this hand on Discord. I don't know what you did, but again, it's easy for me to say in the sense of you kind of have to go through this, but people aren't as aggressive as you would think, in the sense that I would very happily in this situation actually go for sort of a robust betting strategy, even this multi-way, and a lot of times fold to a raise, just realizing that when someone raises you, they're either going to have like the biggest combo draw in the world, or they flop to like 2 pair plus. Now, the theory would probably say that you're probably supposed to be doing a lot of checking here because it's so multi-way and you unblock top pair. But people call with so many hands that they're not supposed to call with, and there's such a good chance that there's a lot of non-clean cards that can come later on in this hand, that I would just go for value now. With ace queen, you're going to get called by the offsuit broadways, the flush draws. I mean, I would probably bet something like 60 or 70, maybe even up to 75. That's just my take.
Okay, yeah. I thought in hindsight that I probably should have bet like 75, 80, just get called by a lot of those draws and a lot of those weaker queen X's. But I actually bet 40 here. And I think what I was thinking was like, I don't know what to do if I get raised, basically. And I wanted more maneuverability, and like I was scared of like a really big raise.
I mean, the thing that I will say, and again, we don't bet to see where we're at, but you get some positive things to happen if you use a larger sizing in this situation. Number one, you get more value from worse, right? And then number two, usually what's going to happen if you use a larger sizing is that when someone raises you, they have more of a chance to have you beaten. People look at that and are like, what does that mean? It just means that you don't have to worry about continuing if you use a smaller sizing when people might start to have a little bit of a bluffing frequency. So larger sizing gets more value right now, and then it reduces your opponent's bluffing frequency. So that's why in this spot, I might end up going, thinking about a larger sizing. Now, somebody in the live chat said you can check. A lot of people are going to stab at it. That might have some credence here too. The only problem that I have here with check calling, though, is that you're out of position, and you're ultimately out of position. And I'm looking at the live chat guy. I don't know if it was YG who said this. So if this dude who might be playing up in this game for like the first time ever, and maybe some of the other regs know about that, if he check calls, like say he checks and like the hijack bets or something like that, and then he check call, and then especially if somebody else calls and he check calls, he always has a hand. And then the person in position is just going to be able to manipulate the pot exactly what they want to do. So why not just bet and get the value now, I guess is basically what I'm saying. You bet. I would have just personally gone larger. Okay, so you go 40.
Yeah. And so I get two callers. The +1 and the button both call.
All right. So the +1 and the button call, the interesting part about that, or not interesting, is just something of note, is the guy to your immediate left has called. That's very strong. This is called positional awareness, right? Because he's got three people to his left behind him. So he should never just have like a 7 here. Now, it can happen. But I mean, even if you put yourself in that spot, even against like one of the biggest whales, like say a guy called you from +1 with like 7-8 suited, if you bet 40 here, I don't think 7-8 suited's even calling, even one of the larger spots at the table, 7-8 with 3 guys behind on a 2 flush board. So when he calls from +1, he's either going to have a flush draw or he's going to have a queen or some sort of other draw, 8-9, something like that. So you bet 40, +1 calls, button calls. Now the pot's 220.
To that point, like when I bet 40, probably not +1 shows up with like a 6 or a 7. But you think the button might have some 6x, some 7x here? Because I kind of do.
He's not supposed to, but it's more likely, yes. And the reason why he's not supposed to, and this is one of the easiest things that you can just clean up in your game if you want to be a winning player, is that when it's multi-way like this, the less you're supposed to make these types of light calls, your multi-way responsibility goes down. So if you had c-bet 40 here and everybody folded to the button, and the button had a hand like 5-6, he absolutely probably should call, getting 2.5 to 1 or 3 to 1, just because he's in position. He can realize his equity once in a great while. He still has the best hand. But when you add in somebody else calling in between, then it's almost he really should not call, because his ability to sort of realize goes way, way down. And the chances that he has the best hand now against 2 people are almost nil. But yes, you will see people make that play. They're not really supposed to, but it's far more likely that he has a 7 or a 6 than the +1 guy, if that's what you're going for.
Yeah.
All right, so 220 to the turn.
Yep, 220 to the turn, and I think in hindsight, again, I probably should bet here, but I end up checking.
So what is the turn?
Sorry. It's the 6 of diamonds.
Oh, okay, so it's the 6 of diamonds. So the board is Queen of Spades, 7 of Hearts, 6 of Hearts, 6 of Diamonds. I got to tell you, Eric, right?
Yeah.
That's a great card for you. That's a great card for you. And the problem, I know you said that you probably should have bet. The issue I have here, put it this way, I would check way more often here, heads up, than I would multi-way. Now, that might not make sense at first, but the reason why that is because if you check heads up, somebody with a draw might start betting. And you might want to take this line for maximum value and play it as a bluff catcher. The problem multi-way now, though, is that let's say the guy in the middle has a draw. He's not going to start betting when the guy behind him called. And kind of the same thing, too, with the guy in position. Like, he might just take a card. So when you check a blank multi-way on the turn, you're going to have it get checked through a lot. Whereas you can take a bluff catching line heads up in a situation where you might get the guy to stab on the front door side with a bluff. But a lot of times these guys are just going to check it through. Now, maybe you're going to say, well, I was scared that maybe like the button might have overcalled, with a 6 or something like that. That's why you go for like somewhat of a bet, like a robust bet fold strategy in these spots where you just bet until somebody raises you to tell you that you might not be good. I'm not saying that I would always bet fold when this 6 comes, because I would still find it a little bit strange, but I would definitely continue to bet here. I think this is one of the best cards. Now, would you have bet on like an offsuit deuce?
I think I would have bet on an offsuit deuce. I think for some reason, like I said, I was just kind of seeing ghosts. It was the biggest session I'd ever played, and I thought the button might have some 6x.
Right. So you're actually concerned about a 6.
I'm a little concerned about a 6.
I'm just saying that from my perspective, like a deuce or a 6, they're almost the same thing here. Like a black deuce and a 6 here are almost the same thing.
Yeah.
It's not quite, because like you said, the button may have some of these bad overcalls, but that's why I would bet again here. But
how much would you bet?
So the pot's 220. I would probably go ahead and bet like 2/3 or something like that. And then you could even make a case for betting pot too if you think a queen is never folding. The only issue for you is that you have a queen. So in this spot, if you had kings or aces, I would probably size more than ace queen, just because there's just way more queen X out there. So those are little subtle things like that. Or you had like 7s full or something like that. Anything that unblocked a queen. But all right, so you check, right? Hero checks.
Yeah. And so now +1 bets 70.
Okay, so +1 bet 70. I mean, so what that tells me is that usually he's probably going to have, like, that doesn't seem consistent to me with somebody who's going to have a draw.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible, but the reason why that is, again, is because he's got a guy behind him. Now, if you had checked this card heads up against +1, sure, absolutely. But when he's got a guy behind him, this seems a lot like queen 10, queen jack, something like that. You know what I mean? So he bet 70, okay.
Me, I thought queen X of hearts.
Yeah, he could have queen X of hearts too, but I mean, how much, I don't know how loose these guys play. Queen 10 of hearts, queen jack of hearts, queen 9 of hearts. Some of those hands might actually even get raised on the flop, but I think he still might bet a queen though too. So he bet 70, okay.
Bet 70, button calls.
Okay.
And I didn't think there was anything to do here but call.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you might be getting, I mean, honestly, I think the most likely situation here is that +1 has a weaker queen and the button has a draw, or everybody has a queen. The problem here is, like, if you check raise, you start to like kind of overplay your hand here a little bit. And there might be frequencies that the button or somebody might actually have something that's really, really strong that was slow playing on the flop, like 7s full, quad 6s or 7-6. So, as played here, the way that you played it, you would probably call. So I assume that's what you do. Hero calls.
Yeah. So I end up calling.
Mm-hmm. So now the pot's 430, right?
Yep. I have 430.
Okay.
And then river comes to jack of clubs.
Well, that's a little bit unfortunate for you in the sense that that is another hand that you lose to now, which is queen jack. And I was talking about that too. So, I mean, I think you probably check and you hope that this one gets checked through. And then if somebody bets, you got to make the decision on whether you think that they're actually bluffing a draw, or, I mean, they're never going to be betting anything for value that's worse than you. I mean, that's what this will come down to. If you check and somebody bets, like, you never have to worry that someone's betting like king, queen. You know what I mean? You lose to queen jack now. So I assume you checked.
Yep. I check.
Mm-hmm.
+1 checks.
Yeah. Well,
And
I mean, that's
then
pretty consistent with like queen 10, maybe king queen. Okay.
yeah. And then the button thinks for a bit and then bets out 275.
Well, so the button bet's 275. I'm never concerned that you don't have the best hand here against +1. The concerning part, I guess, is that the button is betting here, so he's fairly polarized, if you want to say polar, meaning like he's betting queen jack plus or better for value. And then the question is he, usually the people aren't going to bluff in this spot all that often because of the fact that you check called the turn, you overcalled the turn. So usually people don't really choose this spot at this level to bluff into two people. And to be honest with you, they're probably correct because one of you guys is checking to check call for the most part, whether it's +1 or you. Now, what will end up happening is if you call, +1 should probably just fold out like his queen. He should fold out his queen. Now, am I saying that you should fold here though? I don't know because the pot is 600. It's 275 for you to call. So you're getting like 2.5 to 1. And like, here's the thing. I think the button might see, it's a little bit peculiar because you check the turn. I was saying like the button might want to start raising with like a 6 here on the turn, like a single paired 6. But because you checked, he might think that you had just given up and he doesn't want to like just raise the +1 guy out of the hand. Like if you had bet and +1 had called and then the button had also called, I actually think he has less value. But because you check the turn +1 bet, now maybe he calls more with 6x. So it's 2.5 to 1 here. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to fault you for calling. I don't think this is like an auto fold, but I could get on board with a fold just because of the setup that I talked about, that it's just kind of a rare spot. And your hand does look undervalued, as David Smith said. Missed front door flush draw might bluff here. You see a bunch of river bluffs when the preflop raiser looks like he's giving up on the turn. Yeah, but isn't +1 though look like he's going to check call? I can get on board with a call. It's just not going to surprise me if he's got one of those hands. And again, I would actually think that it's less likely that he's got value if he didn't raise the turn, if you had bet the turn. Because here he might have some 6x that doesn't raise turn because you checked. So what did you end up doing?
Yeah, so like I initially thought this is like a snap fold. Like betting the two players, especially coming from like a 1-2, 1-3 background. I feel like players just don't bluff here that often. But then I thought about like he didn't show a ton of aggression on earlier streets. I didn't think he had like a super strong hand. But then I thought Queen Jack plays a lot like this, and he could show up with 6x. I ultimately did fold after thinking for probably a minute or two.
All right, so you fold, but I have no idea. I'm gonna guess. I think there's a very good chance that +1 calls here. Did +1 call?
+1 did think for a bit and called.
Okay.
And the button announced good call.
Oh no, does +1 have like queen 10?
He has queen 10 on the dot. He has queen 10 of clubs.
Oh my God.
4 or 5 of hearts.
4 or 5 of hearts. Wow. And you did, like I said, I had no idea. I mean, it just makes sense. That's why I think I would flick in that call. And that's why I thought +1's calling. And that's why I thought the button's like bluffing frequency should be lower here because he should get called by one guy. That's why, but again, maybe that's me giving the button too much credit because I think if I'm in the button spot there, I don't bluff that hand if I played it that passively because it looks to me like +1's going to check call. Because +1 bet, this is a really good exercise in hand rating on the turn, +1 bet into two people after you checked a brick turn. And that's what I thought he had the whole time, right? A lower queen. So he really looks like he's going to check call. So it's a kind of a bad spot for the button to bluff to think that he's going to get through two people there. But man, that's one where I say you might have to walk that one off, Eric. I don't know if you had to take a break or what, but
I left the table after this hand.
Okay.
But yeah, I think I played a couple more hands and I left the table. It was I think the river's close. I think I played the turn pretty bad. But like 4 or 5 of hearts there should be raising before the river, right?
Well, I mean, I think if I was the button and I had 4-5 of hearts and I didn't raise the flop, here's the thing too. Do these guys know you're stepping up a little bit at all?
No, but I will say I'm 21, so like I
Mhm.
think I feel like people usually like know that maybe I'm not the most. I'm newer to poker for sure.
So, I mean, there's a couple things here. Like maybe if I saw you, I might have put pressure on you if I was the button with 4-5 of hearts, thinking that you're just not going to go to felt with one pair. Now, if I decided to call, I mean, that's a massive draw, right? And you didn't bet that much on the flop. I probably would have a high frequency of raising. Also, too, you sometimes with 4-5 of hearts, you want to get a higher draw out, like from the +1. But let's say I called. On the turn, I would have raised. And if I'm the button and I played the flop as a call, I would have raised the turn because I have way more 6x than the +1 guy. Remember, I always thought the +1 guy had a queen. So I think that there's a bunch of fold equity on the turn against the +1 guy. So I would have raised at some point, usually on the flop, but I would have raised the turn. I would have raised the turn against the +1 lead for sure. So interesting call. Thank you very much. It's a good one.
Yeah, thanks, Bart.
All right, let's move along here to Paul, who has been pretty patient with us. Hello, Paul. You're up next.
Hey, Bart. How you doing?
How's it going, Paul? Where are you playing out of?
Oaks Club in Emeryville, California.
Oaks Club in Emeryville. That is where the Amtrak train terminates.
Yep,
And I know
that's
that
it.
because I've taken that train from Emeryville to Reno before and to Sacramento. No, did I take it to Sacramento? Maybe it was to Sacramento. Yeah.
It's on the same line.
It's a very nice trip if you've ever had the chance to take the train to Reno.
Good.
So Oaks in Oakland, Emeryville. What's the size of the game?
235 with a $10 winner straddle.
Okay, $10 rock anywhere.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. $1,000 cap.
And how deep are you?
1,300.
1,300 effective. Okay.
Okay, and yeah, so that's the game, and it always plays with this straddle, and so it really is a only 100 big blind game, basically.
Yep.
Okay, so the straddle's currently under the gun.
Okay, so UTG straddle.
Yep. And so UTG +1 folds. The MP1 is our VIP.
Okay.
And he always, his VPIP is about 65, 70%.
Okay.
And he always comes in for 30.
So he raised to 30.
He raises 30.
He doesn't limp.
He doesn't limp, which is good, but he's in there an awful lot.
By the way, just to clarify what a rock means to somebody who might not know. So rock means whoever wins the previous hand has to straddle from any position, and then it usually goes in order. So here it's just a natural under the gun one last hand, and he's straddling. So
that's correct.
MP raises to 30. Okay.
Okay. Then we've got MP2 folds. Hijack calls 30. Cutoff calls 30. Button calls 30.
Okay.
Okay. So here I'm in the small blind with big blind behind me and the button behind me.
The straddle.
The straddle.
Yeah.
Oh, did I say? I'm wrong. It was the button who straddled, but same.
But does it go in order then?
Oh yeah, it goes in order. It goes in order.
So the small blind doesn't start first?
Correct. It goes in order after the straddle, wherever it is.
Okay, so this is because a lot of times with a rock, like the small blind will go first if the button straddle, but it sounds to me like it's going from under the gun. So the button is the straddle.
Yeah.
Okay. MP raised to 30, hijack calls, cutoff calls, button completes the straddle. You're in the small blind and you have.
So I've got a king of spades, queen of spades.
Okay.
And I think, well, do I want to raise and pick up all that equity? I am going to be betting first for the rest of the game. And I know that the VIP will call almost any bet I make. So I'm not going to win it here.
Yeah, but if the VIP is just always, if he's playing 65% and he's always making it 30, I would 3-bet this hand 100% of the time with those dead calls. Anytime you have a guy that's always playing that many hands and he's always making it 30, it's a bunch of junk. And when these guys flat call in between, they should never have strong hands either unless they're setting some sort of trap. But You know, even king queen off, I think I might three bet here, to be honest with you. Sounds to me like you called.
I did call. I did call. I just didn't want to be acting first and then whiff and then have two players against me and be in that position.
I mean, I probably would have three bet this to 150, 180, at least 200, something like that. Yeah, you might have gotten through. And
Okay,
and,
so
and even if the VIP calls, so what? You're ahead of his range. The other guys probably aren't going to call behind. But okay, so you call. What do the people know? What does the
yeah,
big blind
so,
do?
so you're right. That's mistake number one. I agree. Looking back at it, so big blind next to me, he calls the 30.
All right, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ways.
Yeah, then the button, which is the straddle. That's not the button. The straddle, which is under the gun. You were right last time. The straddle, young kid, youngest at the table, very impressed with his own play, I believe. He makes it 180.
All right, Paul, we're going to go back here. So you're saying the under the gun was the straddle?
It was. I was wrong. I had written down as the
All right.
under the gun button, but straddle button. But you're right. It's the under the gun.
So even more of a reason to three bet here, so that you drive the two guys to your left out.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, we'll put this back to under the gun straddle. Now he three bets to
180,
which is kind of small. Okay, and then what happens?
And it gets fun. Then the VIP calls the 180.
Mm-hmm.
The hijack calls. The button calls.
Okay.
So I've got 4 callers better and 3 callers to the left of me. So again, I decide at this point, I can basically call or go all in.
Well,
or make a big raise, actually.
It's hard for me to put myself in this spot because I would have three bet anyways.
Yep.
Now, if you're saying the under the gun guy is an aggressive type of guy and he's squeezing here to 180, and now the MP guy calls, the hijack calls, and the button calls. So 180, 360, 540, there's $720 in dead money here.
Yep.
Here's the thing, like you probably aren't going to have much fold equity. You're not going to have a lot of credence like if you were to back jam all in here, because like it looks like it's like a medium pair or something like that. But I got to tell you though, I mean, you might be ahead of the straddle's range here. He kind of made it small. It's just one of these things where, yeah, you're committing your stack. There's 720 in dead money, but you're actually much, much stronger than a normal person that might pull a back raise here in this spot. Like if I was the straddle here and I had like king jack suited or like 9s or 8s or something, I would call you all day long if you back jammed here. So it's pretty close. Sounds to me like you called, right?
I did call, and I kind of know the player on my left. He was no threat to raise at all, so he ended up calling as well.
So the big blind also calls?
Yeah.
So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ways. Is that right? Times
6
180?
ways times 180.
All right. So it's 1,080. You started with
1,300.
1,300. So it's 1,080, and you've got like 11. So you have about one pot size bet left, right?
Yep.
All right. Let's go to the flop.
Okay. Flop is ace of hearts, king of clubs, queen of diamonds.
Oh, this is interesting. Oh, I remember this setup. So you flop bottom 2 here on ace, king, queen.
Bottom 2.
I think you have to check and evaluate here, Paul.
Okay. So on every possible street, I did it wrong.
I just think if you come out and rip here, it looks really, really strong. I mean, I guess you could make a case. I mean, if you rip here, it's like a pot-sized bet.
Yep.
Maybe you get called by ace jack, somebody with ace jack, thinking that you've got like king queen, because you would have three bet with like ace queen or ace king, and ace jack might have like equity. But I kind of want to see what the straddle does here. That's why I said like I might check, and I kind of want to see what the straddle does here if he bets here in this spot. I mean, it's 6 ways.
Yeah, so I guess I agree. I mean, the hands that beat me, a lot of blockers out against them, ace king, ace queen. Didn't feel like there's that kind of hand. Jack 10, I'm going to be dead to that anyway.
Yes.
Dead to 4 outs.
Because here's the thing,
Um,
Paul, like if you check and the straddle bets and then somebody like moves all in, I think you can just fold. I mean, that's what you want to see. You want to see what happens in front of you here. If I was in this spot,
Yeah.
like if the straddle comes out and he bets like, 300 and everybody folds, even then it's kind of like a tough thing because he's betting into like 6 people. But I mean, once another guy comes in, if there's a bet and then somebody else comes in, you're just dead all day long. That's why I want to check and evaluate. But did you rip it?
I ripped it. I wanted to avoid the hard decision later and decided that I was gonna rip it.
So you move all in and what happens?
It folds, the big blind folds, the straddle folds.
Well, that's good. So the straddle
Yeah.
folds. Okay.
Right.
Uh-huh.
VIP calls,
Okay.
and everybody else folds.
All right. Well, you might be fine here if it's your VIP. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's
So
VIP, I mean, again, we don't want to be results oriented. I'm just saying this is probably once you rip it all in, which I wouldn't have done, this is probably the absolute best case scenario for you. Just the VIP calls.
it is. No, I totally agree. You could have anything.
All right. So what happens here?
Okay. So the turn was a 6 of spades.
Uh-huh.
Very, very pretty card. The river was a 10 of diamonds.
Uh-oh.
And he had the ace jack that you said that he might have had.
Again. It looks like I'm on.
So-
looks like I'm on point here today.
Yeah, you
do
certainly
not,
are.
Do not know the results.
I ran into the calculator. I was 61.5% on the flop.
Mhm.
He is 37%. So to get that in, with a 3-to-1 edge on the money, 2,000 to win 2,000, 2,200. Take that all day in this case.
Well, I mean, you're 60-40, right, to win. I mean, I know there's
I'm
dead
60-40
money.
to win.
I know there's dead money out there, so you can look
Right.
at it a number of different ways. It would have been interesting to see if you checked and then the VIP had bet. So let's say you check.
Yeah.
And then it gets to the VIP and he bets like 700. And then it gets
Right.
folded to you. You're going to go with it, right? Against the VIP?
I think I have to.
Okay.
If the straddle bets it, then I'm afraid.
See, that's what I'm saying.
I'm
If the
worried about
straddle
risking
bets
this
and then
thing.
the VIP goes all in, I think you have to fold. But I think you
Right,
open your
right.
stack up too much here as played because it's so multi-way and it connects
Yeah.
with the board in so many manners. I mean, you actually had the best case scenario happen and then unfortunately you still lost. But thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it.
Sure. All right. Thanks, Bart.
All right.
Bye.
All right. Let's move along here to Nathan, who I believe is another first-time caller. Nathan, I remember your hand is a very, very good one. Again, I only remember bits and pieces of it, but I have it rated here pretty high. How's it going, Nathan?
Good, Bart. How are you today?
Where are you playing out of?
This hand's played out of Rivers in Chicago.
Rivers, Chicago. Is that different from Des Plaines, or is this is Des Plaines?
It's just Plains.
Okay. You're a first-time caller, right?
That's right.
And what's the size of the game?
It's listed as 510, but there's always a 25 on, so it's 510, 25.
Oh, and then what's the cap? What are the caps?
It's 500 to 5K.
Wow. 500 to 5K. Does this game normally run all the time, or?
I was visiting from out of town, but like looking on Bravo, it looks like it's running one table most nights.
Okay. So it's the biggest game in the room, right?
Yeah, there's a semi-private 25-25 that was running some over the holiday weekend, but this is normally the biggest game, I think.
Okay. And how deep are you?
25-50 effective.
25-50 effective. Okay. Start us off.
Yeah, so I'm in the low jack with 6 of clubs, 6 of hearts, and I open to 75.
Hero in the low jack, 6 of clubs, 6 of hearts, 3 blind structure, 5 right under the gun, 5, 10, 25, right?
That's correct.
So it gets folded to you and you go to 75, which I assume is probably about the standard open size.
Yeah, that's what everybody seemed to be doing.
6 of clubs, 6 of hearts. Okay.
Folds to the small blind who calls, and then the third blind calls as well.
Okay. So you get 3-way action here. The pot's probably like 225. Again, it's still a little bit of I still think it's a little bit odd for the small blind to be flat calling here in a 3-blind structure against somewhat of a late-ish open. I would normally play 3-better fold here, but it's live poker and you'll see that. He brings the third blind in and the pot's 225. Okay.
Yeah, and then the flop comes out, ace of clubs, ace of diamonds, 9 of clubs.
Ace of clubs, ace of diamonds, 9 of clubs. Okay. And hero has pocket 6s.
Correct.
Okay.
Small blind checks, third blind checks,
Mm-hmm.
and hero bets 100.
So I can probably get on board with a protection bet here. I think this is actually a little bit, just a tad too large. I think I might, if I was gonna bet here, I probably would bet maybe something more like along the lines of 75, if not smaller. The only issue with going super small is then you get 9x to call, and then you're sort of in a little bit of a guessing game. But because then it's like if somebody calls, or you're going to check back the turn, and then you don't get a whole lot of credence, like in a delayed double barrel bluff or something like that on the river. But the theory goes, if you're betting for protection, it should be with kind of a small sizing. I don't think you should bet 4 ways. Okay, 3 ways with no 3 bet here, I can probably get on board with the bet. I would just made it just a tad smaller, but okay, you bet 100.
Yeah, and the small blind calls and third blind folds.
Yeah, that's really strong from the small blind, because when you bet 100 here, which isn't even that small, and then he's got a guy behind him, I guess sometimes some bad players might take off with I don't know anything about the small blind, but when you take a look at this, I told you anyways off the top, the configuration was a little strange because he flatted anyways pre. So how much just 9x is he going to have? Like, I guess guys might call with like 10-9 suited, but let's say you stick the small blind in there with 10-9. Is he calling this with the guy behind him? Maybe, but a lot of things have to sort of go your way for this guy to just have a 9. It's a really strong call here on a there's clubs out there too, right? There's a front door club draw, so. Right?
Yeah, there's front door clubs. There's no 9x of clubs available. If the small blind called, I was pretty much done with the hand unless I think the 6.
Mm-hmm.
If the third blind calls, I think I have more options depending on what the run out looks like.
I agree.
But I was betting, for equity denial against other hands.
Yeah. All right. So pot is 425. Okay.
Turn is the 8 of spades.
All right.
Villain checks, and I check.
Yeah, I think I like that play. So you're just done with it. You just hope that you hit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, you hope that you hit. And again, like, even though you used slightly larger sizing than what I would have used, it's just a situation where it still isn't necessarily the worst. It's a protection bet on the flop, right? Like, you could protection bet multi-way, and if somebody calls you, then, you're most likely beaten. It doesn't necessarily mean the bet on the flop was wrong. You can definitely make a protection bet and say, well, I'm not going to get called by worse, but there's so many, I need to just win the pot right now. There's we think about that more in tournaments, but there's a place for it in cash games. So hero checks behind, and we're still at 425.
Yeah. And the river's a good one. The river is the 6 of diamonds.
All righty.
And villain leads out for 150.
Well, leads for 150.
Yeah.
Well, ding, 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 right? Ding, 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 ding. Now, obviously, there's always that possibility. So the small blind's either going to have at least an ace, right? At least an ace is also pocket 9s, by the way, too, which might be a hand that he might flat with. Would he ever call the flop with 8-8? I think that's way less. I think this would be, for value, it's ace X or 9s. And then he could have like a busted flush draw. Which isn't going to really matter. And once in a while, I guess you can make a case where he could have backed into some straight if he's playing super wide, hands that he should never have in the small blind pre, like 10-7 of clubs, or a hand like 5-7 of clubs, which you now beat, by the way, too. But when you take a look at just, I always look at this spot, unless the small blind is out to lunch, the only ace X that should be V-pipped here pre, from the small blind's perspective, should be ace X suited. So you look back at the flop, the ace of clubs and the 9 of clubs are out there, the ace of diamonds. So there's 2 combos of ace 9 suited that are available. Ace 9 of hearts, right? And ace 9 of spades. Now, when the 8 of spades comes on the turn, that's at the other hand that you lose to, right? There is 1 combo only because the 8 of spades is out there. And then is there a combo of ace 6 suited that he could have? I'd look back down at my suits. You actually don't have the good ones. If you had the 6 of spades in your hand, he couldn't have ace 6. But it looks like, because you have clubs and hearts, and the clubs and the ace of clubs and the ace of diamonds are on the flop, he can have ace six of spades. So ace six of spades you lose to, that's one. Ace eight of hearts, that's two. Two ace nine combos, that's four total. And then pocket nines, that's seven. Whether or not he would flat with pocket nines, these are just very sort of liberally giving all the value that you lose to. And then what do you beat? You beat any ace that's not full. How many combos of like ace jack off are there and ace 10 off are there? Well, there's two aces out there on the flop, so there's two more aces, 2 times 4 jacks. Maybe let's say 3 jack, like maybe let's say he would 3-bet with ace jack suited. There's 12 combos of total ace jack. There's 12 combos of ace 10. If he 3-bets some of those, then there's probably, I think, just 9. So it's like 9 and 9 is like 18 of the offsuit variety. So right then and there, ace 10 and ace jack of the offsuit variety, there's what? I think there's 12, excuse me. There's 12 combos. It would be 2 and the offsuit. I think there'd be 12 total. That's just ace jack and ace 10. And then we already said that there's 7 value combos too. I think I raise here.
Yeah, that's was my thought with it as well, that there's a lot that we can get called by, and our hand looks kind of weird here because my best aces should have kept betting through on the turn.
Yeah, unless you had like some sort of crazy thick value that you just decided to like make it look like a protection bet with like ace 9, like you check back turn, or you had ace 8 or something like that. But yeah, I understand what you're saying for sure.
Yeah.
But it, your hand is what it is, right?
Yeah. So my intention was to go pot here. I calculated it a little smaller than that when I did it in real time, and so I went to 650.
So a pot size raise would be about 725 on top. So a pot size raise would have been to like 875, with the pot being 425. But so you raised, so here raised to 650. And I probably, here's the thing. This is going to get interesting, right? If you are always saying, all right, this is like a textbook raise fold for value type of situation where I don't believe this guy's ever capable of like bet 3-betting anything here that's going to be like worse than a full house or a bluff, right? If that were the case, then I would probably like your idea of pot size raising just a little bit more, because I just don't know if any ace X is going to fold out. So you get additional value from the hands that you beat. And then also, kind of like a previous call, the larger you make it, the less the bluffing frequency is. Now, of course, this equation changes, though, if you forget to raise fold, or it's possible that you might not want to raise fold, but that's what we're looking at here. So you raise to 650. I have a feeling I might know what's coming here.
Yeah. So I raised to 650. Villain thinks for like 5 to 10 seconds, and he covers, and he just grabs a stack of 1Ks and tosses them in.
All in.
Yeah.
So when you raise to 650, the pot is 1225, and then he's jamming for what? How much is it total? How much did he jam for total?
It's an additional 1725 is what I have.
So it's like 2375 total.
Yeah.
2375 total. So an additional, you said it was an additional 1725, right? So let me just do the math out here real quick. 800, 1225, 1225. So it looks like it's what, 3,600, like 17 for you to call?
Yeah, like 3,600, 1725 to call.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, man. I've made raise folds like this before. I mean, you can level yourself into, and it seems to me like obviously you're advanced enough where you've even started talking about this, Nathan, beforehand. You could level yourself into thinking that a guy could possibly be making a play at you because you don't really arrive on the river here with a lot of like thick value hands besides like 6-6. So he could be making a play at you, and if he wants to get you to fold like 6-6, he could make a play. Whether that happens in reality is pretty unlikely, I would say. It's fairly unlikely. I'm just trying to think about, like, if I'm in the small blind spot, what is my minimum 3-betting hand here? What am I 3-betting? Like, what's the minimum? Am I 3-betting ace-6 here? Like, remember we talked about he had one combo of ace-6, or is it always just like ace-8 plus? And because I don't think that you're checking back, maybe you're not playing like a bet check with ace-9, and there's only 2 combos. The only problem with ace-6 is that if I have ace-6, then there's way less combos of the hand that makes sense for you to have, which is 6-6, right? So maybe with ace-6, I wouldn't bet 3-bet here. If I had ace-6, only leaving you with one combo, but I might do it with ace-8 plus. I'm talking about for value, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I said, I've made raise folds like this before. Are you like really, really far up in your range? Sure, you're far up in your range, but again, like we talked through, this is probably the hand that makes the most sense that you have, but is your villain exploiting that? Like sometimes in PLO, you'll see a play like on a flushing board. I'm trying to think here. Like you so rarely see this in Hold'em, but sometimes like you can see somebody turn trips into a bluff in PLO to try to get somebody off of like a lower boat. If they have an ace, like say he wasn't full here, like he had ace-10, and he's just like, well, this guy's going to have like 6-6 here, like way more often than he's going to have like a boat because I have an ace. Like I'll get him to fold 6-6. That dynamic doesn't usually exist really much in live Hold'em. So I'd have to think that this guy is some sort of superstar. And even then, I just think that you've set this up kind of nicely to like raise fold at the end.
Yeah, that's how I thought it through too. It's weird. I think this is probably the best hand I ever get here with, but river 3-bets are just so nutted.
Yeah.
So I tanked for a long time on this. Villain profile, like a over 50 Asian male rec player. I tried to talk to him, but kind of limited English.
Well, if you're saying he's like an Asian rec, if you think he's a rec player, there's no way I'm calling here.
Yeah.
I mean, that just answers my question right off the bat.
And so I eventually laid it down.
Did you get a reveal?
I didn't. Right as I was starting to show fold and holding my cards like that, and he pointed down at his hand then and said, ace king. And I said, you have ace king? And he says, yes. And then I folded still, and I said, show me. And he didn't show me. And
Yeah, I don't buy that. I don't believe it. One of the other things too that you can just, when somebody lies about their hand, you can go back and look at the whole thing. Not only would ace king not 3-bet the river, but how often is ace king playing this hand this way for the no 3-bet pre? And then maybe he does, if he somehow fly with ace king, he does have a little bit of a frequency or a higher frequency of just check calling flop, but no 3-bet pre, check call flop, bet 3-bet the river. No way. And then he didn't show you. I would feel pretty comfortable about my fold there, Nathan.
Cool. Thanks, Bart.
And I will say though too, that again, I think you played this really well if you're willing to raise fold, because you get the maximum amount. Because if you can count more hands that will call you that are worse than are better, then absolutely it's a raise. That's making the assumption that he's never folding an ace. Now, maybe sometimes we might not be able to make that assumption, but let's just make that assumption. Then the raise is proper. Then though, but if you're not capable of raise folding, if you say, well, I want to raise for value here, but if he comes over the top, my hand's just too strong. I'm just going to call it off anyways. That equation changes. And then if you're not going to raise fold, then you might want to just call, because it changes the equation drastically if you're not capable of raise folding for value. So I appreciate the call. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. We have one more hand here booked at 4:20, and this guy is not on the line yet. And this was a new guy that came on as well through Discord. So I just want to check here real quick, but this gives us a second again here too, where we're doing our Cyber Monday sale right now. And this is the only time that we do this every single year. 30% off of all plan levels, including you. Whoa, what just happened here? Did I just lose my... What happened here? Are you still with us, guys? I don't know what happened here. Discord has messed with my stream. Hopefully I'm still with you guys. I'm going to have to go to my phone here real quick. I just want to make sure that this guy is still on. I tried to open Discord on my desktop and it was doing like some sort of update, and it kind of messed with my my streaming service. Sunshine Poker. This guy's calling from the UK. But anyway, so yes, it's a great time to hop on if you've never been a CLP subscriber. If you want to come back, 30% off of all plan levels. For life, by the way, too. For life, for as long as you hold the subscription. It's not just like a one-time thing. You will get that. So if you want to check it out, I know we've got a lot of people in the live chat that are subscribers. And we're always looking for new people to come on the call-in show as well. So if you're new to the site, even if you're not a subscriber, I'm always looking for new calls as well. I told the guy that it was 9:20 UK time. So we'll give this guy a couple of minutes. Shout out to Nate Schmidt. We just dropped, of course, the blueprint to Crush Live Poker, which is a new course. We haven't done a new course. Man, it's been at least 3 or 4 years, maybe even longer with Fast Track. I know I've updated the course, but Nate is doing a 9-module course. 6 of the modules are already up on the site. We're going to put modules 7 and 8 up in December, and then module 9 in January. And I actually put up module 1 because it was really quick and it was like a rehash on YouTube today. So if you kind of want to check that out and take a look at a sample, module 1 is up. And we didn't do like a whole rehash of like everything. Nate did kind of his own rehash because, I mean, we've got a lot of stuff that sort of goes through the basics. And Nate did a lot of work on kind of making a pre-flop starting hand thing called Solve for Live that we have on the site as well, where he kind of live node locked a lot of assumptions and came up with kind of like a pretty good like pre-flop hand starting chart type of situation too. And that's available for everyone as well. And yeah, we'll just give this guy a minute or two more. But I will be going into play at Encore tomorrow. Oh, and then there's one other thing too. So if you're new to the site or if you're watching this on the call-in stream, you must have heard of the WPT, the big free roll they're doing on December 13th. It's a $5 million free roll. So it's in 2 weeks. It's at the Win. It's during the WPT championship. And the way that you earn a seat or get a seat is you have to sign up through an influencer like me or through somebody else. And we draw these free seats. They gave me 20 seats and we've drawn 18 seats. They're drawing the last 2 seats of my entire pool tomorrow. So if you want to get in and have a chance to win a seat, the seat is worth at least $2,500. And to be honest with you, I think it's going to be worth a lot more because some of the people who are not showing up, if you win a seat, you actually have to show up at the Win and register, and they're not adding seats. For people that don't show up. So if they have like only 1,000 people, each seat's worth like $5,000. If you want to get into the drawing for the last 2 seats, you can head over to clubwptgold.com and sign up using the code BART, and that will get you in our drawing for the final 2 seats for this amazing free roll. I'm going to be out there playing in the free roll. They're also giving away, I think, 100 10K championship seats from that prize pool. And you can imagine the level of play that you're going to see from these people that are in this free roll. I mean, these are people that have been signing up from like Rampage and Graton. It's going to be an absolutely amazing, amazing event. Well, I guess we're going to wrap it up here for this week. Usually we do like 5 calls or so. Actually, before we always used to do just 4 calls, but apparently this guy doesn't look like he is going to... he's not calling in. So I guess we're just going to wrap the show up. Thank you guys very, very much for keeping it real. And welcome to everyone that doesn't get to usually watch this live stream because we put this live stream on unlisted. You can always watch it live. And if you subscribe to the website, you can always watch it unlisted. But this is how we make the YouTube best of hands that we put up like 4 or 5 times a week. So thank you guys for keeping it real. Thanks for all the live chat interaction. And we'll be back here at the same time next week, 3 p.m. on December 9th. Have a good week, everybody. Bye-bye.